Hey guys, welcome back to Ultimate S&S. So we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of why you need to be prepping, going out to the store. We did just recently have a holiday, but this is pretty much what it looks like all the time around here. As you can see, it's getting harder to find bread. It's getting harder to find the meats and things like that. Where you're looking for chicken, pork, or ground beef, it's getting harder and harder to locate that stuff. And then when you can find it, the prices of it have gone up so much that it's really hard to just say, you know what, I'm just going to buy a bunch to stock up, because quite frankly, if you buy a bunch of that, you're going to miss out on something else, and you're going to miss out on things that you need around the house as well. So I think it's real important that we talk about this food shortage that's happening here in 2022. So one of the main reasons that I like to do this little homestead project around here is, one, I have fresh eggs. I did not get a shot over at the egg aisle. Unfortunately, I didn't even think to go over there, guys. Sorry about that. But the last time I was over there wasn't a whole lot of options, and the prices had really gone up quite a bit. I'm noticing that dairy prices are starting to really skyrocket too. We used to be able to buy the off-brand great value cheeses and stuff like that for around $1 for 24 slices, and that is pushing upward of just over $2 now. So we're looking at almost doubling in price just within the last month. And I expect to continue to see those prices go up as we come into the year a little further. Right now, the World Food Program is saying that there is a lot of shortages around the world, not just in this country, but around the world, that we're seeing grain shortages. And I want to look, see if I could find any evidence of that. And sure enough, went to the bread aisle, and there's not a whole lot of bread left. Now, that could be partially because we have holidays and it's summertime and stuff like that. But this is pretty much kind of an ongoing thing when we go to the stores out here, is we're seeing less and less of what we typically eat, and the stuff that's usually left on the shelves are the more expensive brands that people just quite frankly don't have the money to pay for. About 2 years ago, they started raising the minimum wage down in this state. And while that seemed like a really good idea for a lot of people that were wanting to make more money, unfortunately, what that means is that the cost is going up. So they're actually making less money now than they were before. So that is one of the things that happen when you start manipulating minimum wage to raise everybody up to what they call a living wage. And I do believe everyone should have a living wage, but the only way to do that is basically to deal with your economics around your area, as far as like your rent payments and things like that. But it is actually more expensive to rent in this town than to just buy something. But most people's credits have basically become shot. They don't have their credit where it used to be, mainly because last year that people were losing jobs if they did not follow mandates with getting these things, and they were losing their jobs and stuff. But that's one of the great things about in Florida is Governor DeSantis finally put an end to that type of stuff. Now, there are some jobs where you don't really have much of an option. That's going to be in your medical fields, such as working as doctors and nurses and working in hospitals, or even in the doctor's offices and things like that. They pretty much can determine what they want to do, but they couldn't mandate it through the federal government. But we're seeing a lot of jobs that are actually coming into a point where in a area where people are saying there's not enough jobs available, and then they're basically trying to blame that on the fact that nobody wants to work. We're seeing a lot of things change here within ourselves. So one of the announcements that came out is, by the end of the year, if you shop at Home Depot — I like to go to Home Depot or Lowe's, but if you shop at Home Depot, they're going to be making this to a situation where you need to do your shopping online through a tablet or an app or something like that. And then you're just going to have curbside pickup. There will not be any more in-store shopping. And that's one to basically create a situation where you're going to have a reduced labor force. There's going to be less jobs and things available as well. So we're seeing where, on one hand, they're talking about trying to get people back to work, but on the other hand, these jobs are basically, they just cannot deal with the labor shortage, and they're having to restructure what they're doing their jobs. Not just that, a lot of them have their own mandate, basically, where they want people to make sure that they're going to be vaccinated and stuff like that. And these jobs, when they push that, that's going to reduce the size of the labor pool that are looking for jobs in those areas, because we do, down in this area, for the most part, we believe that you have a right to choose if you want to put that vaccine in you or not. And when you start taking that right of choice away from people, they will in turn exercise their right of choice not to go to work for your corporation. And that's typically what we're seeing happen in this area. I can't really speak for other states, though the reports sound pretty similar of what's happening. And another thing I think that's happened is a lot of people lost their homes. They had to rack up their credit card debts and things like that, and they've not been able to replace those jobs to pay those credit cards off. And people have realized that it's better to try and work for yourself and start your own business, because at the moment where they can save a penny, they're going to either lay you off, or two, as soon as something comes out, they're going to basically rid you of your job for a season, and then when they are ready for you to come back, they want to call you like you're a dog who's been scolded and ran off up the road, but then has to return for dinner time. And people do not like that type of mentality when it comes to employers. So it reminds me of back in the day. I worked with the Steelworkers Union, and we'd had a meeting, and one of the guys that actually was a supervisor in the company was actually talking about wanting to ask the question why it seemed like people just don't have a loyalty to a company anymore, because apparently this guy's dad had worked for 30, almost 40 years for a painting company, and he retired from there, got a little watch and all this stuff, and he wanted to know why people weren't doing that anymore. And mind you, this was right after they had laid off a bunch of people. Well, that is why, for employers who may be watching this video, that is why, because the moment you can save a penny, you don't care about your employee's actual life, and you cut them loose. And they cannot make it on unemployment, and there's not a lot of options on these jobs, where if you've worked a job for 10, 15, 20 years, you're not going to come out and start making that same amount of money. In fact, there's a lot of employers where if you tell them that they're just laid off, they won't hire them, because they feel that as soon as that job calls back, you will go, which most people would, because the wage is higher. So when you start showing your employees some loyalty, then they might start showing the employer some loyalty. But unfortunately, we're seeing where we are basically a working class, working for the ruling class. It seems to be the mentality, and we're called upon when we need it. But when we don't start to answer those calls, then they kind of get mad at you, and they start trying to make life very difficult on you as far as inflations and things like that. And I believe that a lot of that is what we're seeing here in the country. Another reason that we're seeing the lack of food in the stores as well. Let's check some more of those images, guys. Is partially because we have basically crippled our trucking industry. So there's a lot of owner operators out there, and in my opinion, I'm not a trucker. I've never worked as a trucker. My dad and my brother had done long haul trucking there for many years, and just talking with them, when you're an independent driver or an independent contractor in your truck service, you're paying for all of your fuel and stuff like that. And quite frankly, right now, these runs to run these trailers to different stores and stuff, and bring the food to the stores, or whatever the case may be, it's getting to a point where it's not basically you're not going to make any money. So basically, even in some cases, you will lose money just to move some of this stuff. So you're seeing the trucking industry crippled right now by the diesel prices. Diesel fuel has gone through the roof. I can remember when I first started driving, and this has been years ago, and when I first started driving, diesel fuel actually costs less than gasoline. It costs quite a bit less than your lowest grade gas. But now diesel fuel is more expensive than your higher grade of gasoline. We're also seeing, I don't know if you have kerosene heaters and things, a lot of people keep those as backups in the northern states, mainly because if the power goes out in the wintertime, you need a way to be able to keep your family warm. We're actually seeing kerosene prices, which is actually one of the lowest grades of fuel that there is, and it's usually used for heating, but it costs more than diesel fuel now. Even the off-road diesel for like the tractor out back, I'm noticing that it costs more than gasoline today. And that is really surprising to me, because off-road diesel used for tractors and things like that, that is what the farmers are using to get the harvest in, to plant new crops and things like that as well. And when you start going up on those prices, you're going to, one, see that the prices of the food that they are able to produce go up. And we're not going to be able to produce as much food because of this fertilizer shortage that's happening in the world. And I think it's important that we actually pay attention to what's happening. So if you have not been prepping, you need to get started. It's going to be hard because of the fact that there's not a lot of food out there right now. There's not a lot of availabilities, and the stuff that is there maybe isn't really in the price budget most people would like to go to start prepping, or to start basically trying to reach a source of life where you can get sustainable. So if you haven't gotten a lot of these things, you need to stop dragging your feet on it, and you need to get out there, and you need to start prepping. You need to go get food right now. If you're not stockpiling supplies, and I'm talking medical supplies for first aid kits and things, looking at your prescription plans and stuff like that, talk to your doctor about how you can get more prescriptions, or find out if there's some natural homeopathic remedies that you can use to help stretch those medications as well. And the reason you need to be doing that is because I recently went to the store with my dad, and we were picking up some of his prescriptions, and the pricing is going up, and he had really good insurance that we get. We even pay a little bit extra money on top of what normal people would, just to make sure he's got the medical coverage he needs. And the pricing is continuing to go up. Mind you, just a couple years ago, those prices had came down when President Trump was in office. He was able to get a lot of those costs down, but now we're seeing them come back up. Is it because of a new administration? Is it because of inflation? Is it because of the difference in the pricing for the fuel to move those from location, from the warehouses to the stores, to these pharmacies and stuff? That's all going to have a play into this. Right now, we're looking at what happened over in Europe just a few days ago, guys, over in the Ukraine. Russia was supposedly going to be giving Snake Island, which is kind of a off name for the island, but it's easier to pronounce than the actual name of that port over there. And that is their major export port for fertilizers and grain to the rest of the world. And when Russia pulled back, they then came in and they bombed it with white phosphorus to destroy all the stuff that was on the island, mainly because of the fact that I guess they wanted to cripple their industry of being able to ship things out. So you need to be looking at self-sustainability at this point. You can still go out to Tractor Supplies and maybe even your local feed stores and find chickens and chicks and stuff. It's getting harder to find a variety that's out there, and most of what you're going to see is actually local. So if you're in an area that's being hit really hard by H5N1 right now, you're probably not going to have a lot of options. But down here in this part of Florida, you can go to the feed stores and things like that, and they still have some chicks. You can even look on Craigslist that people have hatching eggs if you want to hatch your own. They have baby chicks where they're hatching everything out right now. And that would be very helpful to you to get a flock going, even if you just plan on free ranging them. And the reason I say that is you're going to give you a source of fertilizer, because we do have a fertilizer shortage. And that is not just affecting this state, this is affecting all states. I have a friend up in Indiana, and he has a rather large farm. Well, I consider it a rather large farm, but he was talking about the price of fertilizer and the effect that it's having on him, and not just the price of fertilizer to keep those crops coming in, because he's trying to keep the crops coming in for the community, but also the cost of the fuel that it takes to run these tractors and these combines and these seeders and things like that. You have a lot of equipment, but when you're talking of doing hundreds to thousands of acres, you do not want to be doing that by hand. It would be impossible for one person to do. It would be impossible for a medium to even a large size family to be able to keep up with that kind of stuff, because you're looking at having to do fertilization stuff. And he was talking about how in order to even break even, the prices that stuff is going to have to be sold at, he's afraid people won't even buy it, because they're going to complain about farmers are trying to make money and to capitalize upon a food shortage. But what we need to understand is that's not what's happening. What's happening is that is what it is costing for them to even break even. And then are you going to do all that work and only break even and not have money for your other bills? No, you're going to try to make a little bit of a profit. That's part of having a business. And if you yourself can start to off-put some of what you're needing to buy in the store right now, that's going to help you. So we produce quail eggs out here. We have chicken eggs. We have honeybees, which gives us plenty of honey. We have a garden that's been kicking off food. And as parts of the garden play out, we are planting in new stuff so that as one area stops producing fruits and vegetables. The other area is just beginning. And that's kind of what you look at. And you need, I mean, it takes work to do that. But quite frankly, you're going to save a lot of money in the process. And we're not talking, $20, $30. At this point, we're talking, anywhere from $100 to $200, depending on the size of your family. I myself here, just two people, for my dad and myself, we're saving about $136 a month in what we are able to grow for our vegetables and stuff coming out of the garden. Our chicken, we get our meat from quail. We do have chickens. I don't typically butcher them out unless I'm just culling the whole down to a certain size on that on my flock. And that's basically kind of what we do. But when it comes to quail, they within 8 weeks, we'll call it 9 is typically when I will butcher them. Within 9 weeks, you can put several, 30, 40, 50 quail, depending on the size of your incubators, every month into the back of your freezer if you need to. And if you will keep that producing, you can even do upward of near 100 if you have large enough incubators, guys. And that's going to give you a source of food, so you're not having to go out and pay $20 for 5 pounds of chicken. That to me is just insane to charge that much. So again, get food now if you haven't began prepping. It is important that we stockpile as much food as you can. Man, stack that stuff up to the rafters if you can. If you have a basement area, that's a perfect spot to put it. You basically have an advanced root cellar at that point, and you can actually stock that stuff up back in there. Make sure that the basements do not have any leaks. If it does, you want to make sure that you have that stuff lifted up off the floor to prevent moisture and stuff from actually getting into your cans or your bags and stuff, because while things are sealed to last, if you do not keep them in proper areas, they will not last nowhere near as long. But understand, we are looking at a very dire time coming up in our country in the days ahead. And that is not just Ultimate SNS saying that. That is not just channels like Survival Living or Urban Prepper saying that. There are so many channels out there that are right now starting to really record what they're doing for their homestead. And understand, the reason we're doing that is because we actually care about you, the viewer. We care about people. We care about Americans. But more than that, we care that our fellow man has a way to be prepared. When, and there will be a day that comes where you're not going to be able to find the stuff that you need, and you're going to have to go to FEMA camps and things like that to be able to go get food and stuff, and eventually they will rein that further in. When that happens, the people who have been prepping, they may feel bad for you, but we have been screaming this for years on many channels. My channel has not been around that long. I'm sharing the way that I do it here. Let me tell you, if someone like me can grow vegetables and have what we've come off, if you've not seen these videos, guys, then definitely check out my playlist. We have gardening, we have for chicken care, we have for quail, we have for honeybees, we have all kinds of different things, how to raise your own mealworms for your flocks. And check those videos out. If you can do that here in Florida in this sandy, really bad nutrient type soil, and I'm telling you, after everything's paid for on quail feed and chicken feed, which chicken feed has come down as far as how much I'm having to spend on that, even the quail feed, because I'm feeding them a lot of stuff out of the garden that I myself don't really eat. But I had an open plot, and I've got so much stuff, I don't want to get too crazy on certain types of crops. And I also want to be able to support my projects here at the house, and growing different types of things like collard greens, turnip greens, and stuff like that. You're going to be able to get your turnips, you're going to get your radishes, your collard greens. If you like collard greens, it's great. If you don't, understand, your chickens love that. Quail, they love that. That's going to reduce the amount of feed that you're having to purchase now, because we're even seeing the feed prices come up. So I started buying this layers feed for the chickens at Walmart because it was about $4 cheaper than going to the feed store. Though I still buy my game bird feed for my quail at that feed store because he's the cheapest in town. The chicken feed has now went up at Walmart, an extra $2 a bag. So basically, at this point, it's cheaper for me to just buy it all at the local store, which is about a mile up the road from me, where Walmart's close to 20 miles. So you're actually looking at saving quite a bit of money, even though it's a couple bucks more. I'm not having to spend as much fuel to go out there. And right now, fuel prices are just insane here. We feel... Wow, I say filled up. I was putting gas in my Jeep. I have a 08 Rubicon, and I'm out putting some fuel in that. And as soon as I see the 50 pop up, I stop, and I want to see where I'm at. Half a tank. That's it. Well, it was actually just a little under a half a tank, guys. But that's where we're at with fuel, man. I mean, we're looking at right around $5 a gallon. And that is not for your 93 octanes. That is for your 83, 87, the lowest grade that you can find, if you can find it, because everyone is buying the lower grades of fuel because they can't afford to pay $5 for fuel. They can't afford to go and pay $6 for road diesel or $5.85 for kerosene. That's insane, guys. People are really starting to hurt in this area. Understand, this is what they call a tourist state. There is not a whole lot of industry here. Now, there are a few industries, but most of it is going to be stuff out on the beach. And unless you're managing these resorts and stuff like that, most of the people were not making a lot of money down here. And one of the things that we're seeing happen is they wanted to have a increase of a federal minimum wage. And in this state, that in one hand should help people, but unfortunately it's not. People don't understand when they raise the minimum wage, everyone that's drawing that money and goes, oh, well, they're making more money now, so they go up on their cost. And the reason that a lot of those costs have to go up, if you eat fast food or actually anything that you go and shop at, they're having to pay the people more to stock the shelves. They're having to pay people more to maintain the shelves. So those items are cost more money to get out the door at this point. The same thing if you're eating fast food. You're seeing prices go up where we don't have a dollar menu at a McDonald's anymore. Not that I even eat out, but I do try to pay attention to prices and stuff. But one of my favorite places was to eat out west was called Carl's Jr., which down here in the South is actually Hardee's. I still think Carl's Jr. did a better job presenting the food, but I used to really like Hardee's and would go and occasionally buy a burger from there. And we went from being able to buy like a meal, which would be a burger, fries, and a large drink for around $5. That's now $13. That's insane. So you figure $1 for the drink was the average cost, $1 for the fries. You're looking at, $11 for a hamburger now. Not going to do that. You could, if you can find, you can get a pound of hamburger for about half of that. Understand, you used to be able to get the rolls of hamburger for $2.50 here. Now it is almost $8 for a pound of hamburger, and that is for a decent grass-fed burger. That is not for your frozen patties that are probably more soy content than anything. So again, get food now. Don't stop prepping, guys. Everyone have a wonderful day.